Welcome, everyone. This is Showtime Toastmasters, our Power Hour for October 2021. And our presenter tonight is Jimmy Dent. Jimmy is a DTM. I think he's got multiple DTMs. He's quite three DTMs. Okay, so Jimmy is quite experienced on the topic we'll be discussing tonight, which is mentoring. So please help me welcome Jimmy Dent.
Okay, thank you. This will be about 30 to 40 minutes long. And I hope it's going to be a little entertaining. So it's not, I hope it's not going to be dry. Definitely the beginning is going to be entertaining. I also want to make it kind of interactive. So I may ask people to speak up with some of their own personal experiences to share. I know I'm going to share a few of my experiences. First, I'd like to give you an idea of my credentials of what qualifies me to talk about mentoring. Well, I've been a Toastmaster for 10 years. And during that time, I've actually acquired a professional accreditation as a mentor through a chapter of the International Coach Federation called the Continuing Coach Education, which required me to do 126 hours of core training and an additional 72 hours of mentor coaching. And that's actual coaching of people. And then I've also completed the Pathways Mentoring Project, which takes about 8 months total if you do everything correctly. So what we're going to talk about here is mentoring can be humorous. And we're going to talk about some humorous situations. And we're going to talk about how mentoring is in movies and television shows, and some famous mentoring quotes. And then we'll talk about the difference between mentoring, coaching, and counseling. And last, oh, not last, but then we'll talk about the Pathways Mentoring Program. And that's just a portion of this. And we're going to end with the principles of mentoring. So I hope you enjoy this session. We'll start with humor in mentoring. Has anybody ever experienced any humor when they've watched somebody, when you've been mentored as a protege, or you've served as a mentor, or witnessed or heard stories? Raise your hand if you have. I've had experience each one of the things I'm going to show you, which is why I connected with what I saw. Is this one is, your advice is very important to me, so I wrote down exactly what I want you to say. I actually had a member do that to me when I was going to give them an evaluation of a speech. They wrote down what they wanted me to say that was good and what they wanted me to say needed improvement. It's like, so things like this actually do happen. This one, I'm looking for a mentor who can show me how to get rich without boring me with a lot of advice. If any of you have ever had anybody that gave you a lot of boring advice, I've heard of it. I've heard of boring advice coming from people the first time I was an AD, other ADs giving me boring advice. They would just ramble on and on and on, not really saying anything, but just talking a lot. This is one from Gilbert. It says, thanks to my mentoring, someday you will be just like me. Someone drive it straight through my heart. All right. And he says, apparently I don't know what mentoring is. I actually experienced a member in a club when I was in North Carolina who introduced themselves to a new member who joined, who was going to serve as his mentor, and told the guy, after 2 or 3 years, you're going to be as good as a presenter as I am. And tell you the truth, he wasn't that good of a presenter to begin with. If it's going to take him 2 to 3 years to get as good as that, the new guy was definitely in trouble. But that's some of the humor happens. I mean, there are funny things that truly happen in mentoring, even if you watch somebody else. So it's always good material for you to give a speech about somebody else or what you witnessed. But how many of you are aware that there's a lot of movies where the theme is about mentoring? Can anybody think of one? Nate, go ahead, speak up. You can turn your mics on. Everybody can turn your mics on and speak up during this presentation. But if you know of a movie, speak up. Well, I'm going to give you a list of a few here.
One of them
Hey,
that
Bobby.
I think of Star Wars and Yoda being the ultimate mentor.
That's on the list. The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker and Yoda. Yoda was his mentor. But also look at the Karate Kid,
Yeah.
right? Wax on, wax off. The Dead Poets Society was all about mentoring.
Mhm.
Good Will Hunting, the main focus was mentoring. Chronicles of Narnia. It was really a children's show, but it had a lot of mentoring lessons. Mary Poppins. You think about the theme. Kung Fu Panda, definitely. Have anybody seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Men in Black. You had Will Smith that was being mentored by the older one. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was also all about mentoring because you had the master teaching the turtles. Now, what about TV shows?
Oh,
Can you think of any
Jimmy, you
TV
missed
shows?
Sound of Music, though.
What's that?
You missed the Sound of Music.
Yeah, I don't have that. That's right. Yeah. The one I loved was Home Improvement. And it was Mr. Wilson was always giving advice to Tim. It was never a discussion. Tim was always in trouble, and Mr. Wilson was giving advice and straightening him out. But there was other shows, Scrubs. Dr. Cox in Scrubs really served as a mentor. Dr. House in the TV series House was always a mentor to his interns. Parks and Recreation, the mentor was Ron Swanson. And then 30 Rock, it was Jack Donaghy. Mad Men, if anybody's watching, it was Roger Sterling. And Frasier, it was the father who was an ex-cop that was shot in the hip. He was also mentoring the two kids, which was Frasier and his brother.
Niles.
Niles, right. And so there's a lot of TV shows that there was a theme about mentoring within the show. So look for TV shows from now on for mentoring clues or movies and look for that mentoring because you can learn a lot from the movies and the TV shows about the style of mentoring. Now, there's also some famous quotes on mentoring. Can anybody think of anybody that's maybe has a famous quote? You don't have to know the quote, but just maybe the person's name.
Okay.
Socrates.
Yeah, I've got three I've shown that I consider my informal mentors because I follow what they say. And that's something too. You can have informal mentors of people you like what they say and how they say it and what they teach. The first one is Bob Proctor, who his quote I liked was, "A mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you." And I kind of like that because to me, that's the essence of mentoring. And, whether you're being formally mentored or informally mentored, I think that's what really mentoring is about. The other one is John Maxwell. I think most people have heard of John Maxwell. And the quote I like from him is, "One of the greatest values of mentors is the ability to see ahead what others cannot see and to help them navigate a course to their destination." It's really what do you want to get out of the mentoring? What's that destination? And they're going to help you reach that destination. And again, I like it. To me, that's the core of mentoring, is to help somebody reach their goals and their destination of why you're mentoring them. The last one is Steve Washington. And mentoring is a two-way street. You get out what you put in. Now, what I like is it is a two-way street, because both the mentor and the protege learns by the mentoring process. It's not just the protege that learns, but the mentor learns a lot. They learn a lot more about mentoring, what's working, what's not working. And we're going to talk about some of that when we get into the principles. So who you start off with, who you're maybe famous, you name famous people that you would consider informal mentor to yourself, that you might follow their writings or their teachings. It could be a book author or a speaker. It could be a Toastmaster or non-Toastmaster. You just like the way what they present and what they teach and what they tend to help you learn. Anybody?
Well, Bobby's my mentor and Trish is my mentor,
go.
and Nancy Starr Cassidy was or is my mentor as well.
Yeah.
And they really, Nancy and Trish saved me. And I've said this story in short time, but other people might not know it, is as I was moving up in leadership for their district, I was asked to run for the first spot of the trio. And my head got really big. I'm thinking, ooh, they like me. They like me. And Trish and Nancy and I were going down to Tucson for TLI. And they're like, well, what have you done? And I said, well, I did this, this, and this. And Trish goes, but you've never chaired a large committee. You've never ran the conference. You never were a TLI chair, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, and then Nancy's like, do you know at least 150 people? Because that's the kind of network you need. And I'm just like, oh, maybe I'm not ready.
Yeah, when I first joined Toastmasters back in 2010, it was in South Carolina, in Charleston area. And some of you may know the name, but it was Subi Matur that recruited me into her club. She's been a regional advisor, and she's pretty well known, but I don't know if you know her. But she's the one that recruited me. And the day I turned my application in is the day I was also nominated to be the VP of membership for the club. I happened to join on the same day they were having the elections. And I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, don't worry, I'm going to mentor you. And then the following year, she told me I was going to become an area director. Well, at that time, I was area governor. And again, I said, oh, I don't know what that's about. She said, don't worry, I'm going to mentor you. And she mentored me for everything I did. She mentored me the first time I served as a Toastmaster. She mentored me the first time I was the VP of Education, and taught me to always have something prepared in my back pocket for an agenda in case people don't come prepared. She taught me how to always have a grab bag available with meeting roles and speech topics and table topics. So if you ever go to a meeting and nobody's prepared, you are prepared, and you just have everybody pull something out of the bag, and that's their role, which could even be the speakers, and they pick their speaking topic. So next is we're going to talk about what's mentoring and coaching and counseling. What's the difference? Anybody know the difference?
Isn't coaching for a short-term specific reason?
Specific skills for coaching, yeah.
Yeah. Well, each coach, mentor, and counseling is different. They have different roles and different responsibilities. And there's a different framework for each. They're very distinct, but sometimes they blend together, and we're going to see that. Coaching is a partnering with people in a thought-provoking and creative process, inspires them to maximize their attitude and personal potential. A lot of times when you're coaching, you're trying to get people to change the way they think or change their attitude. There was a lot of coaching happening when Pathways rolled out because there was a lot of people very negative with Pathways. I mean, I ran into people that were just absolutely negative with Pathways, but never even logged in to look at it because they were just didn't like change. And, so you have to change your attitude. I look at any time there's a change, you need to embrace it. It's something new and exciting and something new to learn, just new technology, new skills. The same what happened with how many clubs have disbanded because they had to start meeting online. There's a lot of clubs that just quit. They don't want to meet online, but they never even tried it. They just quit meeting. Counseling usually involves helping people with physical, emotional, or mental health issues, improving their sense of well-being. A lot of people have mental health problems. It may not be what you think of mental health, but it's their mental attitude towards things. Like right now, there's a big, strong thing about wearing masks and having the mandates for vaccines. And some people get extremely irate and very upset over it to the point where counseling may be a possibility that they need. Not in every case, but there could be some people that just go overboard with emotional feelings about everything. And mentoring is more when someone offers formal and informal advice to help them understand and improve one or more skills. So a lot of times mentoring is more about skills and giving advice relative to those skills. But one of the things that happens in mentoring is you also wind up touching on the other two. Sometimes you're coaching somebody, and even at times you may even be counseling them. So mentoring a lot of times is not strictly mentoring, but it's a combination of all three. And it could vary from one protege to another. Has anybody ever had any experience where they wound up doing more than just mentoring, but also coaching somebody on their attitude or counseling them on something that was emotional to them? I see Connie shaking her head up and down. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't have to explain the situation, but it may happen. So mentoring is a reciprocal and collaborative relationship. Remember, it's a two-way experience. You both wind up learning something in the process. And most often occurs between two people for the primary purpose of the protege's growth. But the mentor also grows as a secondary benefit, because you learn a lot about the person and how you have to mentor them. Because every protege is not the same. So sometimes you have to adjust your style based on the protege's personality and what they need. Because you may be mentoring somebody on speeches, but you may also be mentoring them on a club officer role or a specific meeting role. I've mentored people for the first time they've served as a Toastmaster and mentored them through being a Toastmaster. And a lot of times in doing that, I've sat right up in front at the conference table next to the lectern where they were speaking, so I could whisper things to them as they're going along. Or you might have a mentor because you're serving as a district officer for the first time. Or even for the second time, you may be doing it. I've got a mentor this year. I'm a division director. And I've got a mentor helping me because I've got problems. I have one area that's down to one club. I've got another area where the area director just says, I don't have the time for this anymore. I'm trying to get my business off the ground and I don't have time to go do club visits. He hasn't done any of them yet with 5 clubs. And he doesn't want to organize a contest or do anything else. So I've got a mentor to help me get through this and try to figure out what to do, because I need advice of how to handle this. Now let's talk about the Pathways program. Anybody here done the Pathways program yet? Nobody's done it yet?
Oh,
Connie, you're not sure?
You said anybody who's done the Pathways program?
Or the Pathways mentoring program?
Oh, mentoring program. Okay.
Yeah, the mentoring program.
I'm
It's
like,
a
oh,
special
I missed that.
program that you get.
Actually, I have my 2 mentees lined up. I just don't, and they, I don't know what my next step is in it.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, we'll cover that. Yeah. Typically what happens is after you complete your first level 2 in your first path, there's the Pathways Mentor Program will appear in your base camp as a recommended optional program for you. Now, if you haven't seen it, you can always contact World Headquarters to have them activated. And they'll add it in. So if you're past your first level 2, which I hope most of you are, and you haven't seen that, if you want to do it, you can always go through and preview it. You can look at everything. You can access all the levels and see what's involved without doing any work. But I'm going to cover what's involved in it. I'm going to skip over level 1 because there's really nothing to do with level 1 within the program. It is divided into levels. Level 2 is just an intro to mentoring. All you have to do is read a document and tell your VPE that you read it. That's real simple. I mean, that's probably one of the easiest projects to do. The next one is a level 3 where you prepare to mentor. And what you're doing is you're just filling out a project completion form and turning that into your VPE. Again, you're not doing any mentoring yet, but you're developing a plan. And that's the project completion form. Now, level 4 is when you actually get into mentoring. And this is what they recommend. It's a short-term mentoring project, which could last about 2 months. And then you give a speech on the experience, about the mentoring experience. Level 5 is when it gets really involved, because they recommend this takes 6 months, and then you give a speech. So I'm going to start with level 3, prepare to mentor. You fill out a mentor self-assessment. And this is where you're kind of assessing yourself. And this is one of the forms you fill out. And then you meet with your VPE to discuss your readiness to mentor, where you can go over your self-assessment. And you don't fail, it's just a discussion between you and your VPE. And there's no speech associated with this project. It's just fill out the form and then discuss it with your VPE. And it's really not that difficult, but some people do find the assessment difficult because they have the fear that, well, if they don't fill out right, they won't be allowed to mentor. And that's not really true. In a way, the VPE is going to act as an informal mentor and maybe even helping you with the assessment. So you're prepared. Level 4 is now you're going to actually work with a protege. So you may pick your protege, and you're going to complete the project. You're going to develop a protege success plan. And that's what the protege wants to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. You're going to fill it out with the protege. And then you're going to create a mentoring communication tracking log, which you record down every time you talk to your protege and what advice or what kind of counseling you gave them. The protege fills out a self-assessment. And then there's a mentor evaluation resource. And there's 360 feedback from the protege. And then at the end of that, you give a 5 to 7 minute speech on your experience and what you learned. It's kind of like reflect on your path, but it's just reflect on your mentoring experience. And it's only 5 to 7 minutes. What takes the bulk is it may take about 2 months to actually mentor somebody. But what you mentor them on can be, that's agreed between you and your protege. Level 5 is the advanced mentoring project. That's the final project in the mentoring certificate. It normally takes about 6 months is what they recommend. And you create the mentor communication tracking log. And there's a mentor evaluation and a protege success plan and a monthly goal check. This is where you get together and you check, how are we doing with accomplishing the goals that was agreed upon up front? Are we on track? Are we behind? We're getting too far ahead. Some people learn slowly, some people learn quickly. So whether you're behind or ahead, it's not a bad thing. It's just knowing where you're at. And then at the end of all that, again, you're just giving a 5 to 7 minute speech on your experience and what you learned. And then you get your certificate when you turn all that in. So it's really, it's an interesting thing. And what I find is the paperwork is very similar to the paperwork they teach you to use in the International Coach Federation for a professional certificate of mentoring. So I think Toastmasters took a little bit from the professional field and made the mentoring project a little bit more formal. And when you document things is when you learn a lot. You get to sit down and assess yourself, evaluate what's going on. It's really developing a plan. And we're even going to talk about that in the end. And this is where we're going to wrap up with the 7 primary principles. Now, there's a lot of more principles, but I picked out 7 that I consider to be the primary principles of mentoring. Number 1 is, who are you? And this is, anytime you start a mentoring relationship, take the time to know each other. Don't just start right in mentoring. Get to find out each other's personality, what they want to learn, what your skills are, what the skills are of the protege. You may even want to observe the protege for a while before you start giving any advice. You might want to look for consistencies or inconsistencies, but you also want to know, what does the protege want to learn? I used to have my first mentor, Subi, told me, never try to work on everything at one time. Pick one skill and focus on that entirely. Her philosophy was, if you're trying to improve 10 skills at one time, you can only exert 10% of your time on each skill. It's going to take a long time for you to improve and for anybody else to see any real improvement. But if you pick one skill and focus 100% of your energy on that one skill, you're probably going to have significant improvement in just a few speeches or a few meetings. And then you pick another skill and you focus 100% on that. And so you may want to know, what skill does the protege really want to work on first? rather than just trying to look at everything they need to learn. Ask questions. A mentoring relationship will have lots of time to exchange ideas and goals. Your protege may not really know what they want to learn. They don't know that much about, if they're brand new, they may not know that much about Toastmasters yet. But by asking questions, you can discuss the different ideas and different goals. In discussing too, you may find out some things where the protege may open up. They weren't aware of certain things they should improve on. And that especially comes from observation. So as you observe somebody, you may develop some questions you want to ask them. You know, if a protege doesn't want to become a speaker to give 1 hour long presentations or presentations at TLIs or at conferences, don't push them that way. You want to find out what they want to focus on. It may be just speaking at clubs for 5 to 7 minutes, or they may just want to be organizing their speeches. Or maybe it's just about a club officer role they've tackled. That's all they're concerned about. So ask a lot of questions. Don't take the first answer as being gospel. Probe a little deeper and probe around a lot of various topics. Your communication style is very important because every protege has a different personality and they have a different way they like to communicate. And to me, this is important because this is why there's a project in level 2 about understanding your communication style. If you've taken that, you should have learned that your communication style should change depending on who you're talking to and what the situation is. There's not one style that fits everything. So sometimes you have to really discuss with the protocol or the protege and get to understand what communication style they prefer for you to be able to connect to them. Because if you're using the wrong communication style, you're not going to connect with your protege very well. And your protege may not connect with you very well either. Again, it's a two-way street. So be very cautious of which communication style you decide to use when you're mentoring somebody. And give you an idea, when I get a speech evaluation, I like the evaluator to be brutally honest. Tell me that I did not meet the objectives or I did not do something correctly. I don't care if you give me nothing but suggestions for improvement and don't say anything about what I did good. And that's my own personal communication style. I'd rather hear what I need to improve rather than just what they liked. Because I figured, well, if they didn't mention it as an improvement, they must have liked everything else. You will encounter disappointments somewhere along the way. And that could be as simple as it's not progressing the same as what you thought it would be. Maybe the protege is not as receptive as you thought. Maybe you can't meet as often as you wanted to meet. Or you just may not be getting along. You know, but there will be some disappointments. Some may be very minor. Some may be pretty serious. I know somebody was doing the Pathways mentoring project, and about three months into the last project, was supposed 6 months, the member quit Toastmasters. So he couldn't continue mentoring him. And he was wondering, well, what do I do now? I'm not finished with the project. So the advice was, call world headquarters and see what they say to do. And actually they told him, just go with what you've done so far and give your 5-minute speech on the experience and what you learned, what you think went wrong, and maybe why the person left. And to give you an idea, they didn't leave because the mentoring wasn't effective. They left for another reason. They had nothing to do with the mentor. But disappointments will happen. Some will be very minor and subtle, and some could be very, very devastating. You always want to be checking on your progress with your protege. And the protege should be checking that progress with the mentor too. It's a 360 feedback both ways. Check how you're progressing, what's working well, what's not working well. Are we on track? Are we going in the right direction? At some point, the protege may want to change the direction. So this progress is important, where we're going at. I may want to steer off in another way because as time goes on, interest changes. Yeah, especially if you're in the spring of the year where your protege may say, you know, I think maybe I want to run for this club officer role. What's your advice? Now you're mentoring on the club officer role, where before you were mentoring on something completely different. How many mentors could you have? How many should you have? You should always have at least one mentor. I believe every member should have a mentor, whether it's a formal mentor or an informal mentor that you follow and you follow what they do. Some people have an informal mentor. They just love the way people speak and how they present their speeches. So they always pay attention to that presenter and speaker because they try to model that person. And that's an informal mentor. But you can have a mentor for speeches. You can have another mentor as you being a club officer. And you can have another mentor because you want to enter a speech contest. So you get a mentor that's won speech contest before. So you can have multiple mentors, each with a different specific purpose. So don't be afraid to have more than one mentor. You can have more than one. I've heard people with a myth that you can only have one mentor at a time. And that's not true. You can have as many mentors as you think you need and as many as you think you have time for. The last principle is you have to have a map. I mean, if you don't have a map, you don't know where you're going. A map is your plan. What do I want to accomplish? Maybe a timeline. Now, if you deviate from it, it's not a big deal because it's a plan. You just get back on the plan and you adjust your times, you adjust your goals. But you always know where you're going. What's your next step? And to me, that's an important thing to have. It's even your personal goals, is to have a plan and the goals and timeline is when you want to accomplish things. So now, what did we learn today? Well, mentoring can be humorous. There's humor in mentoring. You know, so watch for it. Watch for other people being mentored and other proteges and look for the humor, because it may even spark a speech for yourself about talking about what you've witnessed. Just don't say the names, but it's great material for speeches. Look for mentoring in movies. Again, that's a great source for making a speech about it, especially when you have to do the speech introduction to mentoring. In one of the levels, you can talk about what you saw in a TV show or a movie and to introduce mentoring. Famous mentoring quotes. There's a lot out there. I showed you 3 of my favorite quotes and the people that gave the quotes. And then we talked about the difference between mentoring, coaching, and counseling, and how mentoring actually can involve both coaching and counseling while you're mentoring. And we talked about the Pathways Mentoring Program, and we talked about the 7 principles. Get to know each other. The dialogue between the two of you is very important. Use the correct communication style. be aware that disappointments will occur, minor or major. It is a mutual advantageous process where both the mentor and the protege learn from the process. And have at least one mentor, either formal or informal. And you can have more than one. And have a map, know where you're going, what your destination is, and when you want to get there. And don't be afraid to adjust the map from time to time. So what I want to leave you with is become a mentor or protege, and then tell us about the experience in the presentation later on. What worked well for you and what could have been better? Thank you. Now I'll open up for questions or any comments.
Great job, Jimmy. You know, as you were talking about the mentoring project and pathways, there's a few of us on this call, Robin, Connie, and myself, that have recently been members of a mastermind mentoring group.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could turn that into a mentoring project. Like perhaps if we did a one-on-one in addition to the mastermind relationship, is that something you think would qualify?
I think it could. I mean, you just have to craft it.
Okay.
Give it some thought and kick around some ideas and
then
and work on it.
So my other question is, when you talked about the 360 evaluations as part of the Pathways project, does that mean that the mentor and the mentee evaluate each other as part of the project?
Yeah, and it could be in a discussion. It doesn't have to be like a formal written down, but you should be talking to each other in the dialogue as far as what's working well both ways. I mean, the protege should be telling the mentor what's working well, what's not working well. Are they getting off track from what the protege really wants to accomplish? You know, a lot of times mentors want to, well, this is what I want to teach you, but it may not be what the protege wants to learn. You know, so that's why it's important to say, have some dialogue up front about what are the expectations. Don't just jump into and says, here's what I'm going to teach you. You know, find out what the protege wants to learn, because that's going to build a relationship. If you're trying to teach them what they're not interested in, you think it's going to last? You know, if you really work together, that relationship could last way more than 6 months. Subi, after 10 years, is still somebody I'll listen to for advice, and I've contacted for advice. So I consider her my lifelong Toastmasters mentor. Yeah, because I trust what she was telling me. Yeah, and there's several members in this club, like, you know, Nancy Stark Cassidy and so forth, that I would have no problem contacting for advice. You know, Trish Blackwelder, same thing. I would contact any one of those easily for advice in this club and in some other clubs. You know, there's people in other clubs I would have no problems contacting for advice. And they don't have to be a formal mentor. That's what I consider informal. They're go-to people. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I'll
Quick
give
question. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Does the mentoring path count towards the Distinguished Club program?
The Pathways mentoring program does not, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it does show up if you submit it. You can submit it, and it does show up in the daily reports as you completed that, but it doesn't count towards the club's DCP. I wish it did.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
And probably more people might complete it.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's an incentive. Robin, you had a question?
Oh, no, not a question so much, but an example perhaps, is that I ran a youth leadership program a couple of years ago with a team of robotics kids. There were a team that built robots and competed with them, that kind of thing. And it was amazing to see them go from hardly being able to speak and to read, this newspaper in a monotone, and yeah, pretty bad. And then after 8 weeks, they were amazing. And they went out and did a speech to the Westmark group that was, government representatives from all over the West Valley. So totally, totally amazing. And I enjoyed that so much that I continued on as what they call the mentor. And got involved with other aspects of it. One of the things they have to do is put together this notebook that talks about all of the marketing that they were doing and the planning and how they build the robots and all of that kind of thing. And so that was a lot of fun. That was, and you're right. I think I got as much out of that, maybe more than they did.
I think it's wonderful to see the growth in some children that are learning how to speak and do presentations. My grandson, he's 14 now. They actually have classes in his private charter school where they have to learn how to do verbal presentations. They even learn how to do PowerPoint. And they do the animation and transitions in PowerPoint. And they actually mentor each other. So they have to practice and get feedback from each other. And it's amazing to see the growth. I mean, I have stepped away and watched him grow. And he really enjoys giving presentations. And it's amazing. They have to do the research. They're given topics that they know nothing about. So they have to do a lot of research and then give the sources of where they found the information at. I mean, they really get all the points.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Anybody else? Well, if not, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope you learned something.
Yep.
And I hope you all go out and become a mentor or protege and learn something from it. Connie, you got your hand up.
Yeah. So I was at Toastmasters International and I don't see anything that says about the mentor.
Okay, well, contact World Headquarters about opening up the mentoring project for you.
And that's what it's called, mentoring project. I see something
Yeah,
that
it's the
says,
Pathways Mentoring Project.
okay, because I see
Let me go
mentoring
back.
resource, and that's all I see about mentoring.
Yeah, let me go back to
Yeah.
this slide here.
Because I think
Might-
Bobby and I had talked about it and we couldn't find it. Remember, Bobby?
I actually did download it. Maybe it was after we spoke.
Spoke? Okay.
Yeah, you can see it's right here. It's called the Pathways Mentor Program
Okay.
on the certificate. So ask them about that and see if they can open it up for you.
Okay.
And you don't have to do it, but you'll be able to go in and you can look at all the projects and read all the project descriptions and all the paper forms that have to be done before you decide to do it.
And
In
then,
the end, this is the certificate that you'll be given when you complete it.
Okay.
and then Jimmy, mentoring a club is one of the requirements for a Pathways DTN, one of the options, right?
Yeah, to mentor a club or coach a club.
Okay.
And I always find out when you coach a club, you're also mentoring the club because you're also teaching the club skills. I always look at when you coach a club, the purpose is to get them to distinguish. But I always also consider the purpose is once you're done, they don't need you anymore. And unfortunately, I've read a lot where the coach leaves and the club just falls apart again because the coach was doing all the work.
Mhm.
And when I coach, I don't do any work. All I do is teach. And I make the club do the work. And I teach them how to do the work.
So,
And I even, I don't do the moments of truth. I have somebody from the club do the moments of truth. and I'll mentor them about how to do it. I do it as a survey. And then it actually creates the action items of what the club needs to work on based on the survey results. And I've also done it where I'll have the survey coded or counted whether the person was a club officer at the time or just a member. And whether they only joined within the last 6 months, because one of the questions I always seem to see a difference in, depending what level the member or club officer is at, is the question about our guests warmly greeted. Where the officers think all the guests are warmly greeted, but the members don't always think that. So they scored a little lower. Everything is scored on like a rank of 1 to 5. But I often see that where the members rank it down maybe around 3 and the officers all rank it at 5. And it's a perception. So, you know, the officers have a different perception of how the club's operating from what the members often do.
Okay, I think I'll go ahead and stop the recording now, okay?
Okay.